Why don't you tell us which is better, Helix or Kemper?
Oh yeah, there's a conversation. Uh, I was thinking about this the other day because typically when I'm building a new preset pack for the Helix, I are you
Oh,
there?
Tanner, you there?
Hey.
Typically, and then you just stopped. So I didn't hear it.
Okay, so what I was saying is that typically when I'm building a new preset pack for the Helix, I use the Helix exclusively. And I went probably 3 months without turning on the Kempers and
Mm-hmm.
just used the Helix. And I got some killer tones in it. Can't remember what I was working on. I was working on the
The Plexi.
Starlight
Okay,
Bethel-esque
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
and
yeah.
then Plexi as well. I updated that. Um, and I was loving the tones. I mean, the fact that you can get the 2 amps in stereo within the Helix itself is it's a different thing. It's a different animal to one Kemper by itself. Obviously, I have two here, but just comparing one
Sure.
Kemper to the Helix, that has a totally different tonality. So I think if your sound is two amps blended, two different amps, then
Yeah.
I feel like the Helix, unless you can afford two Kempers and can handle, so they're a lot more bulky and all that other stuff. The Helix is an awesome piece of gear for that. It sounds really good.
Yeah.
When it comes to just amp versus amp,
Uh-huh.
the best tones I've ever had on the Kemper are by far and away better than the best tones I've ever had on the Helix.
Yeah.
Now, there is a medium where they're pretty similar a lot of the times. And not similar in the way they sound, but the quality. They have different tonalities to them. The Kemper has this mid-range thing that exists in all of the profiles, in my opinion. There's
Mm-hmm.
something I hear that, I mean, I've tried doing blind tests with my own self, just kind of recording stuff. And there's always something with the Kemper that I'm able to notice. And actually, when I started using the Kemper at church, the sound guy told me it sounds like the track, the soloed out guitar track from the song was pumped through the front of house, but he phrased it as a negative. He didn't phrase it like this is it's an amazing tone, and it was an amazing tone. He agreed and thought it
Mm-hmm.
was an amazing tone. He thought it was too perfect. It didn't
Hmm.
have some edge to it that, and this is his words, that came from the tube amp or even the Helix, because the Helix has a more gritty sound to it in the gain. I think a lot of the times
Yeah.
the Kemper is very polished sounding. It sounds like the perfect master guitar track.
Yeah.
That's the way I interpret it a lot of the
Yeah. Yeah.
times. Obviously, there's tricks and stuff you can do. I mean, I'm the
Sure.
kind of person who takes the internal compressor, turns it off. I don't use any compressor on the Kemper.
Mm-hmm.
But just overall, and the Kemper feels amazing to play. It's so chewy feeling. You can really feel it get back to you. The Helix is a lot stiffer. The low end definition on the Kemper is way better. It's got much deeper lows, but there's
Mm-hmm.
also a lot of definition to it, whereas the Helix tends to flub out
Yeah.
on the low end. I think the low end is probably where I struggle the most with the Helix. Then the top end as well. The Helix has kind of a more brittle top end in
Mm-hmm.
general,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But so for just pure amp tones, I think the Kemper is awesome. And the fact that you can play, I mean, you've profiled 100 to 120 amps, whatever it's
Yeah.
been.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Helix has maybe 30 amp models in it. And then you have to go through, we don't have time for this, but go into the whole thing of stock cabs and IRs
Sure.
and all of that. There's so much more to it. Whereas the Kemper, I don't use IRs in the Kemper. I refuse to, because I want it to be this is the amp that was captured. This is the speaker. I want to
Mm-hmm.
play that amp. I'm just not able to. So this is the next best thing for me. Whereas the Helix, you go into the rabbit hole of all the different
Sure.
EQ stuff and all the different tips and tricks you can, I've talked about in various videos. But in general, yeah, I think the Helix, if you need to do 2 amps in stereo, the Helix is hard to beat versus one Kemper. If you need to do lots of effects, flexibility, the Helix is way, way, way more flexible.
Yeah, you
Way
get
more.
that air apparent is really good too. Since that's come out, I don't think I've used another overdrive in the Helix.
The Klon is great too. I love the Klon
Yeah,
in it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. So
it's
I think the you know the the Kemper to me is very bizarre. It's like this. you try a new profile pack that you put out, like the 5v4 Super, and it's like, this is the most amazing piece of technology ever. It's like cutting edge. I cannot believe how good this sounds. It sounds, that one does have a lot of rawness to it, which I like.
Yeah.
That's a little different than some of the other profiles I've tried. And but then at the same time, I tried to delete all the profiles on one of my Kempers to start fresh.
Yeah.
It wouldn't do it. The Kemper froze every single time trying to delete profiles. I had to do like 70 at a time, and it took probably an hour to get through all of the profiles. It's like this piece of technology that's like so cutting edge sounding. It sounds amazing, and yet the files are like 15 kilobytes a piece, and it can't delete them.
So I actually think, this is just a pro tip, it probably looked like it crashed, but was just still working.
Well, it has a little progress bar, and I let it sit for like 30 minutes, and it never
just
changed.
Stayed there. So
and
the thing, I know I've seen a lot of weird stuff. When I've deleted a lot, it'll tell me deleting like negative 47 rigs of 2 rigs.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what does this mean? Anyway, Christoph one time told me, he's like, just ignore it, just do it. Or the other thing is, I told him one time, I said, hey, sometimes when it freezes and I put it in the off position, like if it freezes and I turn it off, it doesn't do anything. It stays on. And he told me, just wait it out. And he's right. If you just wait it out, what's happening is the screen is not responding to you anymore. It's the screen that isn't responding. It's still apparently trying to do whatever. I know it's a unit designed by engineers for sure. The UI could really use some help, but